Welcome back to Bonded Voices. Our topic this session, how to control your political angst. We think it's pretty timely in an election year, and we're starting to see all the street corners fill up with all of the signs. I'm Greg.
I'm Ian.
This is Lauren.
So before we scare you off, the idea of this topic tonight is to help you control that angst, how to measure it, how to understand, rather than getting to a point of where you're overloaded with it.
You know, there's a point in politics where if you blow up the country because of it, it's not worth it anyway.
What?
If the angst gets to so big that
Right.
the whole thing
Absolutely.
just blows up.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, I thought we were going V for Vendetta there for a second.
No. I don't think I'm maybe that. No, but it is. It's the same thing as if you blow up relationships over it.
Right.
So maybe sometimes it's worth it, right? I'll say right now. Sadly, as the political wins get bigger, so do lies. Right, and they paint people with lies, and they build people up with lies as if they're better than they are. And it works on both sides. It works on Biden's side, and it works on Trump's side. And I think you've got that, and you pointed this out before, Lauren. You've got that small percentage on both sides who will do anything.
You'll never change their mind, and they're going to be, the most vocal people that you're around.
So my father said the other day, he's like, what the hell are these people willing to stand out at 110 degrees to see this idiot for? And of course it wasn't Biden fans, because they weren't standing around 110. It was Trump fans. But they were that into seeing Donald Trump that they stood around 100 until people were passing out and being taken to the hospital. So there's that very vocal majority on those side of it. But I think that their angst gets to a point where relationships are done, work careers are done.
Well, you start getting so tied up in this whole, ball of angst there, and it affects your life. It will affect your job. It'll affect your relationships with people, your family. I try to stay out of it as much as possible because it's just not worth it, And like Greg, what you were saying about, news earlier, when we're like, where do you get your news?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a huge part of the process. And we've talked about it multiple times, that a lot of social media algorithms are designed to feed into your search history or whatever you've spent time watching. And so it helps to accelerate someone's views on something particular. And the question that I had asked was, is there an impartial third-party media outlet?
Has there ever been one? Was Walter Cronkite ever super impartial? Were there influences that had the quiet word with him, paid him off or whatever to...
There's the impression that, Walter Cronkite was perfect in that scenario, but I'm sure, yellow journalism is not a new term. It came from the early 1900s. It's been a problem forever. It's just our perception of it seems to be getting worse and worse.
Well, that brings up an interesting topic. So one of the political families here in the United States that is very famous, there was at one point in time a president that everybody loved this president and thought he could do no wrong. Not everybody. The opposite party didn't necessarily like him. But there wasn't the deep dive into every part of this individual's life. And I'm talking about John F. Kennedy and the fact that he was, there's information about whether or not he was actually true to his wife. Potential relationships with Marilyn Monroe, what have you. But there was, I think that in times in the not so distant past, that information just wasn't shared. There was a level of understanding and a level of respect across the aisle of we're not going to go there.
I think the journalists that would have seen these things, they felt privileged to be around these people and didn't want to air the dirty laundry.
But are we also just at a stage where, big business becomes corrupt, big government becomes corrupt, and that government has become so big that the corruption's so rife in there that you've got so many interests in there who are just like, I have to protect this at all costs?
I think the government's always been corrupt. There's always been elements that have been corrupt. I think what has happened is with the 24-hour news cycle, everyone's trying to get the clicks, trying to get the eyeballs to look at them. And so any sensationalism is good sensationalism. And so it just brings more people to that news outlet, whether it's CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. They don't care if it's right. They don't care what they're saying. They just want people on their site.
Okay, so let's bring this back to the target of not necessarily trying to cause more angst for everybody that's driving around thinking, how can they get any more of these people running for public office to put signs on these street corners? And it's only June.
Yeah.
But does it matter? What does it really matter at the end of the day? Does it matter if John F. Kennedy was true and faithful to his wife or not? Did it impact how he ran the country? I'm not here to say whether or not that was the right thing to do, but we're at a point in time where everything, if anybody that is sitting here with us today with your cup of coffee, if we all had a microphone in our face 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, some things are going to be said that you probably don't want recorded. Now, we've got that going with phones that you might think are safe in your pocket, but might be recording, and I'm not trying to go down a conspiracy theory path, but what I'm driving at is there is more desire to fill the 24-hour news cycle, more sensationalism to sell marketing, but are people truly worse than they were 50 years ago? Are we less trustworthy? Are politicians less trustworthy today than they were 50 years ago?
That's a good point. I actually would take the tact of saying that I don't know if that stuff matters too much. I think that more the issue is how much time does Joe Public spend getting mad and angry with the old lady in the store who looks like she could be an opposite political party fan.
Sure.
Because she's wearing those colors and it ends up being a high school kids team,
Right. Yeah. Right.
I've even, seen instances of it where someone will go, oh, I just thought that was one of those T-shirts. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of crazy because is it worth it? I don't know if it is, because I think we know stress is a huge killer.
Right.
And if they can gun us all up to being just stressed out of our minds over the latest word from the White House or the word from the campaign trail about this, that, or the other.
Right.
Like, there are certain things within politics that matter. And we covered it in our episode, Why is Everything So Political? Because that's life. But there are certain things that don't, and there's a certain level of response to them that don't. Now, we're all baseball dads, right? Think of the angst in and around baseball over a bad call for a 9-year-old.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, really? That's where we've got to. Now, you go back 50 years, back to your question on that. Mm-hmm. They weren't fighting over a bad call on a 9-year-old 50 years ago.
Well, think about it. 100 years ago, what happened in Washington impacted the people, but no one really paid attention. It may take a week or 2 weeks for that, information to go from Washington all the way to California and back,
But by that time, and I think we see it at the moment, and it's used in politics. Time's a great diffuser.
Mm-hmm.
If one of the political parties puts out a hit piece on someone on a Monday, and 2 weeks later it's found out to be a bunch of BS, 2 weeks have gone by. It's had the desired effect within those 2 weeks before it's found to be fake news or whatever. And then at that point, it doesn't really matter.
Very true.
Because it's been diffused.
Well, and this is one of the things, when we talk about AI and where it can be very harmful is in the bias is that the algorithms that these social media platforms use will start seeing how you react, and it just starts snowballing for you. So if you put a comment on something and it happens to be a negative comment, so they go, okay, this person doesn't like that, so they comment more when they're unhappy than versus their things they like. So we'll just start feeding them more and more and more and more.
Right.
And you're just like getting overwhelmed with things that are giving you angst, things that you don't like. And you feel like you have to respond to these things. And when reality, you should just, okay, put your phone down or close the laptop and go, time to go out and take a walk in the woods or whatever it is.
Like, I've seen people go off the rails big time over stupid stuff with politics. And I've seen them also not react to things that they probably should be in the streets about.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a term called happy warriors. And I think that's a place that if you're passionate about politics on either side of the aisle, if you can work it as a happy warrior, that's a much better place to be.
What is happy warrior? What
it means you go into battle for your politics basically with a smile on your face. You don't have the angst.
Okay, yeah, wow. And think about how that would. So if we go back 50 years ago, theoretically, people talked with their neighbors more,
right?
They talked with people at the grocery store more, whatever it might be. So if you use that term happy warrior and that idea of, hey, how you doing today, Ian? What's going on? What's new? And someone says, oh, well, did you hear the latest about this candidate? Wow, okay, yeah, interesting. And still able to have a positive conversation with a positive approach, that's a very powerful position.
Because I think we all know that our political parties mean to divide.
Right.
So I think we fall for it. We become like, they're, what's the right word, stooges, when we actually fall for that whole divide over a trivial issue. Again, like there's certain issues that I think across the board, like let's say that someone had an issue they want to round everyone up and stick them in a concentration camp. That's an issue worth a bit of angst.
Right.
But if it's something like, we want to, raise your property taxes by 2%, it's something to get a bit miffed about, but it's not worth the angst and the lighting the torches and running down the street during the night. So,
Greg, back to what you were saying, if you run into someone in the grocery store and they bring up, oh, have you seen this? Mm-hmm. What's a good methodology to be happy about that? So how would you diffuse that situation? Let's just go with, where you live in Arizona, there's something, we'll just make up that there's going to be an issue at the border sometime soon.
Okay. That never happened.
It'll never happen, I know. So we have hypothetically we have an issue, and I come to you. Have you seen what happened at the border? How would you handle that? I mean, because I think we talk about it. Like, oh, you should keep it happy. But how do we tell people that?
I think when people say happy warrior, I always look at it as you go gladly and joyfully with your positions, but you don't get angst over things that you don't believe in. And then there's that neutral bit stuff.
But that's easy to say you don't have angst, but how do you not have angst about it? That's what I'm trying to get at.
Okay, let's use a real world scenario. I have a very good friend who actually said, we should let everyone in who wants to come into the country. He goes, we need more people, just let them in. And I didn't react to it the way I maybe would, because I thought to myself, I don't want to ruin a friendship over that. But because, one, it's said sort of off the cuff, it's not said in a serious setting, and now I'm not going to go angst over that, because I believe that, you know, if someone cuts me off in the local post office while I'm waiting in line, I've got an issue with that. Like, in the same way, if I was waiting when I was to come into this country, and I was waiting there for more years because I felt all these other English people kept jumping the line, I'd be pretty pissed.
So did you change the subject?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
So if you think you can't have a conversation without getting, you know, emotionally involved in it, so people should change the subject, or politely, or
I think you could also ask, help me better understand your position on why you think this is beneficial for the country. In that situation, the person that says, I think that the border should be wide open, help me understand where you think we're lacking.
I'm glad you asked this, right? Because in every argument, and I think you can apply this rule to every argument, there's a line somewhere for somebody, right? Whether it's abortion or war or what, there's a line somewhere. Mm-hmm. And so let's use it with illegal immigration. So my friend says, we should let them all in, all of them. If I said to him, you mean all 8 billion? He'd say, oh, no, not 8 billion. But there's not 8 billion that want to come. I'm like, yeah, but okay, what? 1 billion? No, that's still too many. And so the line would come down until about, okay, now you're starting to limit it. I just limit it more than you limit it.
Right.
Like, I want a controlled, steady flow of great people from around the world who want to come and be a part of America. I don't want a flood, but I want a lot. I want the right amount of people.
Sure.
A lot of them to fill the jobs, to do the things we need to enrich the country. He's not thinking it through. He's just saying, we need let them all come. He doesn't mean all come. So I'm not going to get angst at him over that. And I think you can apply that rule to every issue. There's always a line. And so I think, as advice to listeners, take a deep breath and think it through, and then say to them, start with the line at the ultimate degree on their side, and they'll go, no, I don't mean that many. Mm-hmm. And then it'll just keep bringing it back.
Well, and that methodology goes opposite of what the political parties want. They want us to argue.
They do.
And so that is a constructive conversation where you're finding common ground with your fellow man or fellow woman.
So remember when raising taxes was everything? So I remember hearing someone say, well, what do you think should be 99% taxes? Oh, no, not that much. Okay, so you want to raise them, but how much? Well, enough. Okay, what's enough? 80%? No, not 80%. And it kept coming down to it was like, now we're having a conversation about it. You started off with like, they just need a much higher, the tax the rich.
Sure.
And then it's like, well, they'll just tax them a little. Like,
well, I think that does society a service. Because that person that you had that discussion with, maybe their tone is different the next time they're having that conversation with someone else.
Well, I think it would
be. I think absolutely, going back to the immigration, I think that the border should be wide open. I think their conversation following let's dig a little bit deeper. Are you really talking about everybody on the face of the earth coming to the United States? They might change their terminology the next time they have that topic, that conversation, which then lowers the overall volume in society.
Yeah.
From the far extremes to, I'm going to say that the majority of us are probably pretty darn similar in what we all want.
And that's where you would end up getting to, right? Now, you may get someone who turns around to you and says, no, you're just being stupid by saying everybody. But are you really? Because at some point, everybody Doesn't have to be 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, 100 million.
Mm-hmm.
But you're engaging them in the conversation. I think that's the main part of
and you're just trying to find the line, right? A realistic line.
Yeah.
And I think it exists in all of the things we argue about politically. There is a line there.
Mm-hmm.
And the argument should be about where that line is.
Right.
But yet people make it absolutes on either side.
Well, and they do that based on the very biased sources of information that are pumped out there that try to separate.
Yes, exactly.
So let's beat the system together.
Yep. It's so takeaways. I think we just had a few, right? Which is like, try and find that line. But I think pick your battles. Don't go looking for a fight, because there are certain minds you're just not going to change. And so, don't find a stranger who's wearing a T-shirt that you don't like and just decide that that's going to be your battle for the day. I don't think that's worth it.
I think the only benefit of getting into a screaming match is if you want to end up on social media from somebody videoing it.
Probably, yeah.
Other than that, you're pretty much guaranteed to end an argument and both people walk away saying, I've just proven my point. The other side is stupid.
Right. Now, you've got to have a certain amount of regard for somebody to have the conversation where you'll get some form of consideration for your argument.
Mm-hmm.
You have to actively listen to the person you're having the discussion with. You can't go in there with, I'm trying to convince them of my opinion.
Yeah, because if your regard for someone is just you're nobody, and they know that you think that, they're not going to listen to you anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not going to change any hearts and minds.
Well, and we should all be learning every day.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you close your mind off to learning, then I don't know. I don't want to get there. I don't want to be absolutely. In that mindset. Because there's some reason why that person might be passionate about something.
And look, I remember growing up, the discussion of politics and angst that was never really a big part of those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
You get a little like hot under the collar, but like it was never angst where it was like, let's fight over this.
Right. There's always more important things. There's other things that had our attention more now that we live such a, not perfect lifestyle, but we have a very easy lifestyle in this country. And these are the only things we can get upset about.
Yeah. I think that last piece of advice for me is don't let social media drive that angst.
Yeah. You control it.
Yeah.
We had an early podcast about turning off the phone for 30 minutes or set it down for 2 hours or whatever it might be. If it causes frustration, set it down. Go for a hike like Lauren mentioned.
Yeah. Great. Yeah.
So I think that's a wrap.
It sure is. I'm Ian.
I'm Greg.
This is Lauren.
And we'll see you again on Bonded Voices.